Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I was raised in a family with 4 moms and 35 children. We were members of the FLDS Church, which is run by Warren Jeffs, who is now serving a life sentence in prison.
I was raised mainstream LDS in Utah. Sam and I have been married for 10 years and have 2 awesome kiddos.
Yes, we do. We want to quickly thank all of our donors, YouTube members, and our patrons on Patreon. Thank you all so much for our support. We also want to just mention that we have a goal of reaching 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, which is, I know, a lofty goal, but hey, why not? Let's see what we can do. So please don't forget to subscribe.
Yes. Today, we've had a lot of people asking us if we are going to review The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives on Hulu. And yes, for all of you out there that are thinking, I did not want to have to watch that trash TV, we did it for you. You are welcome. And oh my word. Okay. Just so you guys know, like obviously a lot of our channel totally focused on a lot of polygamy. Sam does a lot of the talking. I'm asking the questions. I am the Mormon wife in this situation, and I have a lot of opinions that need to be heard. No, I'm just kidding. But I have, between the fact that like my TikTok honestly has been surrounded by this long before. Their PR has been amazing. I mean, the fact that
the church's PR, right?
The Mom Talks PR.
Okay.
The show's PR, because here's the thing. They came up with a show. They added a super clickbaity title. They used the word Mormon, which is like a trigger word for people who are still active members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Good
so
job.
Already we got controversy, right? Mm-hmm. Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, which the whole point is to not have secret lives. And then you make it all about these people who have huge social media influence already and have millions of followers.
And already have a lot of opinions from all different people of all walks of life. Very strong opinions about these people.
Yes. So altogether, I feel like it's just been a media frenzy waiting for this to happen on Friday and waiting for it to come out. And we just binge watched the whole thing, okay? And
it was a lot.
It was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot. And I just want to say today we were like, there's so much that we could talk about. Today we're going to kind of just go over generally our thoughts, feelings on the show as a whole. And then we are going to, in the next couple weeks, dive deeper into some of the specific things that tie into Mormonism, or these Mormon, whether they're active members, inactive members, true believers, not true believers, all that good stuff, and get into like some nitty gritty things over the next few weeks. Things like wearing your garments or not, which has been huge on TikTok as well. Gets brought up in this show a lot. Word of wisdom issues, chastity issues. There's definitely some key things that I'm like, okay, I'm not going to give you guys like a 4-hour video right now. So we're going to split those up. If there is other things specific to the show that you're like I just want to hear opinions on.
Like language.
Like language.
Some of the words they use a lot, yeah.
Yeah. Do I need to put like a trigger warning? Like, oh my gosh, like there's a lot of language in this show, by the way. So if that's something that you don't want to hear, do not watch the show.
It's crazy because I know a lot of people that are active members of the LDS Church that will not go and watch a movie because it says the F word more than once.
Yeah.
And these are Mormon wives, the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, representing the church in a way, and their mouths on these girls, oh my gosh, it was shocking. I mean, it is rated MA, the TV show as well, so it's not surprising that they showed that, but I just, a lot of people wouldn't expect that coming from Mormon people.
Yes, which kind of brings me into taking a step back before the show was even released. I feel like, especially on TikTok, there was so much controversy about them representing Mormonism, right? Is it all for clickbait? Are any of them even really Mormon? Are they all Mormon and they're trying to like make the church look bad on purpose? There's a lot of different controversy. And I really feel like it was kind of brought down to 4 groups. So I'm just going to give like a quick recap of these 4 different groups that had very strong opinions about this. I guess there's technically 5, and how honestly they are all valid. Like, I don't think I heard a single opinion where I couldn't understand where they were coming from, right? You have the mainstream, true believing, active members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who are looking at just the commercials on this and saying, there's so many things that are going against the standards of the church. This does not represent us at all. So much so that the church itself came out with a statement. And in summary, maybe I'll post it up so you guys can read it yourself while I'm talking about it. But in summary, it's saying like, hey, there are a lot of media. There's a lot that Hollywood wants to misrepresent our standards, wants to misrepresent us. Basically, if you want to be able to see how Mormon people really live, like, go talk to somebody who's actively living it and trying to follow our standards and Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
And that's kind of their message, right? Like, they're always going to have misrepresentations of us. Sometimes it is accurate, sometimes it's not. They're trying to say, like, go and look at the majority of people, right? This is a small group of very specific girls on Mom Talk, and that doesn't necessarily represent, no, we know it doesn't represent the majority of the church. Okay. So that's totally valid. If you're an active member and you're like, this doesn't represent us, and you feel like it's making you look bad because of the fact that the church does have very specific standards.
Yep.
Right? They have very specific standards. And even as things have gotten progressive, like more progressive within the church, it's still very obvious what a lot of those standards are.
Yeah. But it does slightly open the door for these kind of people, for the progressive people within the church. Because the church, I mean, coming from the FLDS, where they're like, we're not going to change. We're going to stick with the fundamentals. We're going to do it no matter what the world says, no matter what the world is changing to, we're not changing. And there are some mainstream LDS members that are still like the old timers, I guess you could say, that still feel that way about the mainstream church as well. That no, yes, the prophets have come out and said a little bit of changes here and there, but they're not willing to change with the church's culture. And so I mean, there's people of all different walks of life, but because the church is coming out and saying, hey, you can actually receive your own revelation about certain things, and it's up to you about whether or not you wear your garments this way, or whether you get more piercings or tattoos and those kinds of things. It is opening the door for members of the church, like on Mom Talk, to say, well, this is how I choose to live the gospel of Jesus Christ, or the church's doctrines.
Yeah, and that brings us into the second group, right? That first group, and again, I honestly think that each of these groups is valid in their feelings, because the church, while it has become more progressive, there are certain things that they continue to stand very firm and strong on, okay? And then you have the second group, who are active members who like the fact that the church is getting more progressive. There's people like these girls on the Mom Talk, right? Because beforehand, it's really making it seem like this is a girls gone wild, like, oh, these are all good Mormon girls that are just going crazy. And that's really not what the show ends up being about, okay? And even within the show, there are 4 girls who are active members, going to church every week, teaching it to their children, like, doing most of the things, okay? And heck, some of them are doing all of the things. So anyway,
Good job
there's
using the word heck.
Heck, thanks. I didn't
Nice.
even notice.
Nice.
But anyway, so you have these, so then there's a lot of people like those girls where they say, okay, I can swear and still be a good Mormon. I can choose to do a second piercing because the church just came out and said that those type of standards, I can get a small tattoo, I can do this, I can do that. Or I don't have to follow every rule perfectly in order to live all the covenants that I've made, right? So then you have that group of people who are like, oh, Mom Talk's actually representing us and that we can be progressive. And they kept saying over and over, like these 8 women, which aren't even the original Mom Talk, honestly. They had to get a lot of these because only one of them, only Taylor, was in the swinging scandal.
Which was crazy to figure that out. Hopefully we're not spoiling anything if you haven't watched it yet. But we were expecting the show to give us all the details on who exactly was in this scandal and why and how they got involved. But no, Taylor is the only person on the show that had anything to do with it.
Yeah, so that was a whole thing in its sense. So this is like a new Mom Talk. This isn't even the original Mom Talk. But these women are all saying how Mom Talk is supposed to be empowering and going against the patriarchy and just standing up for women who want, you know, those more progressive things and being able to not wear garments if they don't want to and be able to have the piercings that they want and be more independent and not so dependent on their husbands and be the breadwinners, all these things that go against the social or cultural norms of the church. while still a lot of them still believing in the doctrine of the church, right? So that's where that line between those two groups of people, right? Both people can be active. There's going to be people who are like, you go for it, fight the patriarchy. We can still believe in the doctrine and still make more of our own choices. You're going to have the people who are much more of like, all of these rules, if the prophet is suggesting it, it should be taken seriously and we should be living all of those type of things and all of those suggestions because he's a prophet of God who is speaking for God to give us these examples, you know. And again, I think both of them, I can totally see their side.
Yep.
The more interesting side to this that I think has a lot of people riled up is like the Ex-Mo community. The people who have left the mainstream LDS church is still divided into two. There's the people who say, you go for it, girls, fight the patriarchy, do what you want, don't let the church hold you back. You should be able to do whatever you feel like, good for you, take the good parts of the church, leave the bad, and that are like, kind of do think that the mom talk is empowering for people or think that the church is headed in the right direction, even if they're not a part of it anymore. Mm. The other group is the people who look at these women and say, I followed all of the rules, but when I stopped believing doctrinally, then I stepped away and got ostracized for that. And yet there are girls who are not following the rules and getting to have like the badge of honor or the title of Mormon. And that can be painful or hard. And that's probably the most interesting group because since we have stepped away from being active members of the LDS Church for doctrinal reasons, not because of rules or wanting to do anything outside of the morals and codes.
Stereotypical things you hear, like, oh, they wanted to leave so that they could go to Disneyland on Sunday.
Yeah.
Or, oh, they wanted to leave so they could drink coffee. Or, you know, you hear all of these stereotypes, which maybe it does happen with other people, and that's where those ideas came from. But I think more often than not, it's doctrine. Or it's something that, in my case, for example, that you get to the point where you have your own kids and you have to think, okay, what is best for my family moving forward? And it's not all about me all of a sudden. It's about what's best for my family. And then you have to make those tough decisions at that point.
Yeah. So for people who leave doctrinally, sometimes when people seem hypocritical and they say that they want to have that title and they want to be able to do whatever they want, it can kind of like sting for wounds of people who felt like they did all the right things and still had to leave, and leaving was so painful. I'm sure everyone's probably wondering, like, which one do I fit into, or like, which one do we fit into? And I'm trying hard to not be too judgmental towards people because I do think I think I'm a cross between. I think that there is room for the church to make progress and let women be able to express themselves more and have like having modesty be between you and God on surface level, I think is an awesome thing. You know, not having such strict rules that lead to guilt and shame, that's awesome. It is hard for me to not feel the sting of, I followed all those rules. I only had one piercing. I still do, just mostly because I have never, I don't know. It's hard to know.
Ingrained into your brain.
It's hard to know where it's hard to know where the like indoctrination stops and where like your own decisions begin when you're coming out of a faith that's so deeply ingrained in you. But like, okay, I only ever had one piercing and I didn't ever get any tattoos and I did all these right things. And yet I feel like people look at me less than because I said I didn't believe the doctrine anymore. And then there are girls who are accepted into the fold and are like still like held and loved. I don't even know if loved is the right word, but like that are still able to go and be a part of that community and be accepted, even if they're not following all the rules, because they say that they still believe in the doctrinal part.
Right.
And so that sometimes can just sting a little. And I'm trying to let go of like the judgment that I know that I automatically have just from the way that I was raised and not care as much. But it does sting sometimes, to be honest.
Yeah. And that is a very good point because you see this time and time again where there could be someone, and we're going to take the 8 women here as an example. Mm-hmm. There can be people that don't follow the rules, that completely go against, in some ways, by their actions, go against what the church teaches. But they are still very much accepted and loved by their family in every way because they still say, like you said, that I believe in the church. You could have someone, and I'm not going to name names here, but you could have someone that still follows all of the teachings of the church because they were raised that way and they think it's a good way to live. You know, maybe the modesty and the word of wisdom, the things they eat and the drink and the you name it, all of the standards of the church. If they keep those, but they feel that there's something with the doctrine that doesn't fit quite right, that they say, no, I don't believe in the church anymore, but I'm still going to live a good life. And because of that one thing that they say, I don't believe in it anymore, in some cases, you can be completely shunned, or at least your relationship with your family or loved ones can be so difficult and so changed and so strained because of your admitting that I don't believe in it the same way that I used to. So it's just interesting to see that difference between people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, honestly, like all the stuff that I saw beforehand, like I said, made it seem like it was going to be like a Mormons Gone Wild. And that really was not what the show was. Obviously, there's a lot of drama between the girls, jealousy issues. You're seeing their relationships with their husbands. There's a lot of stuff like that. But I do feel like as far as like a spectrum of women on the Mormon scale, I would say that you see a little bit of everything, right? And they kind of joke in the show that like there's the sinners versus the saints. There's like 4 girls who are either less active or not active at all. And then you have the 4 who are active. And you kind of see like the vices. You see like from the girl who's still wearing her, like they all kind of make fun of her, which I didn't like at all. They made fun of her for wearing her garments. They're like, oh, you forgot your garments once. And I'm like, okay, but being a member of the church, that's like a really important and sacred thing when you've gone through the temple. So like, good for her. You have from garment wearing, making sure that, I don't think I even heard her swear. Did you hear Jen swear?
I think I heard all of them
like once
swear
or twice,
occasionally, but then there were the obvious swearers.
Ones who are.
Yes.
But I'm just saying, you have from the spectrum of like husbands graduating from BYU, baby blessings, doing most, if not all, of the LDS checklist, right? You have from there. And then you have people who are not wearing garments, but still go to church every Sunday, still fully believe, still fully active. And you're watching as this goes and progresses. And then you see like Taylor as the first one in the sinners, I would say, in the sense that she's had a rough road, still on a rough road, but is saying that she's trying to turn her life around and trying to go back to church, right? So she's in that I'm inactive, but I'm trying stage. And then you have girls who are obviously not active anymore, not really trying anymore. But I still personally think that a lot of them, if you ask them like if they believed the Book of Mormon was true, or if you said, do you believe Joseph Smith is a prophet? I think they would still say yes.
I am so curious. This intrigues me, and I agree that to some extent they believe. Mm-hmm. But this intrigues me because the way I have always lived my life, and I know this is the same for you because we've talked about it. If I believe in something, I'm going to live it as I believe it. I'm not going to say I believe something and then pretend that I can do whatever I want because it doesn't matter. How can someone believe in the church, the doctrine, Joseph Smith, the Book of Mormon, all of the things that are taught within the church, but then not live it the way that it's taught? That's what I don't quite understand. And hey, you know what? Empowering women, I stand for that. That's great. That's amazing. But why, if the way that you're going to go about standing for women is against the teachings of the church, why still pretend or claim to be an active member of the church? Why not just admit, I don't agree, this is okay, I'm going to step away from it, and I'm going to fight for women's rights? Yeah. So I just, like, it hit me, like, just felt weird that they're still claiming to be, oh yeah, we're active, we're good Mormons, members of the church here, and we're just standing up against the church casually.
Yeah, and there's like I said, there's the group of ex-mos that I feel that way, right? Like, where you're like, why are you even still in it? Yeah. Why are you still, like, if you want to fight against the patriarchy, the church has a very specific patriarchy to it, right? Like, women can't have priesthood. You can never have the power of God as a woman in the name of the priesthood.
And priesthood is literally what they're standing up against.
Yeah.
right? Because the only thing, at least nowadays with the way that the structure of the church is, the only thing that really is left in the church that men have that women can't is the priesthood.
Well, and all the callings and authority
that come along
and
with the
power that
priesthood.
come along with it, yeah.
But it's all because of the priesthood that only men are able to have. And of course, you'll have the members of the church say, well, women can access that priesthood. Okay, yes, I understand that, but they're not given the priesthood like the man. That's why the man is the man of the house, or the head of the house, because of the priesthood. He's the priesthood holder of the house. So he has this responsibility to ensure that his family is living correct according to the gospel teachings and the church's teachings and that. So there's, unless there comes a point where women can hold the priesthood as well, I don't know if the women that, like these 8 women, are going to be happy with the equality of the church until they can have that.
Yeah, until they can have what the men have, yeah.
Right.
For sure. And that's very unlikely. There's a lot of changes in the church that can happen, and then there are some that are so core that it's just very, very unlikely to ever happen. And I mean, I can't say never, because there are things that have changed that I thought would never change. So it's not a never, it's a very unlikely. We'll just go with that.
I agree 100%, but it feels like that's what they're standing up against.
Yes, absolutely. Going also on the fact that, like, I feel like the way that the show portrayed what was going to be happening beforehand was so strategic and calculated. But I have to say, guys, the first 4 minutes of this show, they literally got the craziest, I don't know. They had an amazing hook. It was insane. And just the imagery, it was like temples and then women drinking and then this and then that. And like I said, there was like, one time that like a girl drank, or like maybe another time she had a glass of wine. This is not them going on like drinking benders and like partying like crazy animals or anything like that. And yet, like, of course, that gets into the first one. I laughed that the imagery was like the Mormon temple and then like the top of a cross. Like they kept showing like all of these symbols, like a cathedral and a cross, which is like very against Mormonism. Like I'll put a quote somewhere up in here
about not wearing crosses,
not wearing
crosses,
and not using crosses to represent the church. And so while you're watching all this and you're seeing, like, the very first couple things that you're seeing is everything that the church doesn't stand for, except for the pictures of the temple.
Right.
With these women that are like showing all these things. So I'm like, oh, no wonder everybody is so mad and frustrated at this. And then the actual show itself wasn't as much that.
Right. Well, throughout the whole show, though, there were moments where they would show, what's her name? The one that caused all the drama.
Whitney or
Whitney.
Taylor?
Whitney. Well,
okay.
At least Taylor owns it. Sorry, we'll get to it. Whitney, who is supposedly one of the active good members of the church, she goes on this just swearing. I mean, every other word is an F word in her vocabulary, and she just goes on and on and on and just causing all this crazy everything. Like a member of the church would watch that and run out the door because of what she's saying, based on the members that I know personally.
Oh, 100%.
And then immediately after she gets done saying all these things, it switches to a scene showing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints down the side of a building. Just like, and seeing those two things together, I was like, oh no.
Like it like
people
hurts.
are going
like it
to be
makes you
so
cringe.
angry when they see this.
Well, and then the Whitney like bearing her testimony, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
Bearing her testimony of the church, right? And so, again, it's this weird line of like, are church members allowed to swear? Absolutely. Everybody has their own free agency.
But it's very much frowned upon.
It's very much frowned upon.
And there are plenty of conference talks and prophets saying that we shouldn't.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like it's just up to everyone to decide for themselves. I mean, it is, but you're taught and commanded basically not to because it goes against the church's teachings.
Yeah. So there's a lot of those things. There's a lot of the nuance of, are we going to, and I say we is like collectively, like is Mormonism just going to say, you're more open to not having to follow any rules? Like there is going to be no code of conduct anymore, except for your relationship with God or with Jesus? Or is that like actually threatening the core of Mormonism, because Mormonism has always stood for being a strange and peculiar people, for being that like above and beyond in your standards and in your dress and in your language, and all the things that I grew up being taught constantly is that we were supposed to stand out and honestly just be better than everybody else. And I don't even say that in like as badly as it sounds, like a self-righteous way, but it does end up being that way, because when you're told your whole life that it is your job, like you are a chosen generation, it is your job to be better than the rest of the world.
You're supposed to be proud to be a peculiar person and to be unique
and to stand out, because you don't swear. If you're someone who doesn't swear, who dresses modestly, who only has one piercing, who does all of these things, that's going to make you stand out in normal society.
Yeah, and even within the church, within the Mormon Church, you will hear people talk about in a positive way that, so-and-so saw one of our members of the church, and they immediately knew there was something special about them, because how could you be such a happy person with everything going on in the world? And so they went and talked to this person and got to know them, and later they joined the church. So just standing out as being this unique person with a happy smile, some people would call it the Mormon glow. And then just because of that alone, you are converting people to the church, and that's a very positive and good thing in their minds. And so, there's a lot of talk about being different, being better, trying hard to be a really, really good person is what they would say.
Yeah, and really, really good person by the standards of the church.
Correct.
And by the standards that their prophets have literally laid out, like step by step. And like I said, I know that they're progressively like changing a lot of those and trying not to be so like micromanaging of every single choice. I grew up with the For Strength of Youth pamphlet that was very specific, like so specific. And there were a lot of don'ts, right? Like you don't wear short shorts, you don't wear tank tops, you don't wear bikinis, you don't have 2 piercings, you don't have piercings anywhere else on your face or on your body, you have no tattoos, you don't swear at all, you don't take the Lord's name in vain. I mean, the list goes on and on. There are so many don't do this, and now it's a lot different, and I understand. And again, I think that that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It just makes it so that people who are raised in it like I was feel uncomfortable when you see a Mormon girl on this show swearing every other word, and I'm just like, okay, is she allowed to do that? Yeah. Okay, it's probably not a big deal. I'm trying not to be judgy, but like that's not what they stand, like that's not what the church is supposed to stand for, and like, is she going to be okay? And I know even at one point in the very first episode, as like you're kind of getting the quick gist of what had happened with Taylor, Frankie Paul, and all of her issues and things that are going on. And like in the very first episode, her mom is like, have you gone and talked to the bishop about it yet? And she's like, no, because I don't want to be excommunicated, which is when they actually formally kick you out of the church. And the only way to be an official member back in the church is to be rebaptized.
Yep.
And it's a big deal. It's a big, like very shameful type of process to be officially kicked out, because basically instead of being able to just like repent for your sins and move forward, they're saying like repentance isn't fully enough at this time. You can't be a member. You gotta.
We don't want you.
We don't want you to even be associated. Yeah, we don't want you to even have the title. And then you can work on your repentance process, and then you can come back and be baptized and wiped clean again. So it's a very big deal. But the fact that she was worried about that happening, again, signifies to me that while she might not like all the rules and her life currently during this is a train wreck, she still obviously believes it enough that she doesn't want to lose the badge of being Mormon.
Yeah.
It's still something that means something to her, right?
Yep.
So should people be allowed to have that if that's what they feel like? If that's what they feel like on the inside, regardless of their choices, then is the title something that needs to be like protected from the sinners? Or is it something that if someone believes it and feels that way in their heart, should be a title that everybody can have?
Yep, exactly.
And that's probably the main like storyline of this whole, like at least the first episode, and the storyline throughout the whole thing, I think, is what does it truly mean to be Mormon? Mm-hmm. And is it something that you get to title yourself, or is it something that you have to show and prove yourself to outsiders to obtain?
And we're getting to see throughout this show that there are many people that claim to be, they're baptized members of the Mormon Church, and they are active members in some cases, but yet they're out living a life that many members would disagree with. But who's to take that title away from them, right? It's not me or any other individual person, member of the church out there to say, you can't be a member of the church because you're not being obedient, you're not following the rules, right? So that just, it gets tricky. The church is not going to love this type of publicity about the church because it's showing what people are able to get away with, how they're able to live their lives and still go to church on Sunday. But once again, I can imagine that most people would say, well, church is for the sinners, right? And so anyone's welcome until they're not, and then you can get excommunicated. So, where does it begin and where does it end? There's just a lot to cover here, which we'll get a little bit deeper on specific topics with our future videos about this.
Yes, we have kind of an outline. We kind of have specific topics that we mentioned in the beginning, things like the word of wisdom, things like modesty and garments, and a lot of things like that. But if there are other things that you specifically want us to talk about that you saw in Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and you're like, I just have to know what is up with this, please leave it down in the comment section. We would love to be able to focus on the things that you want to hear about. And until then, please like, subscribe, help us hit that 100,000 goal by the end of the year. And thank you guys so much for being here.
If you are still watching and you haven't subscribed, I'm shocked, first of all. But thank you for being here. And don't forget to subscribe to help us reach our goal. Thank you all so much. And we look forward to talking with you soon.
Talk to you all soon.